Yo, what's going on, guys? Cultofmush back at it with another video. The Mafia 3 PC system requirements have been officially revealed. And before I get into the system requirements, I want to talk a little bit about the game itself. Mafia was never this gigantic series that every gamer was really into, but it seems like with Mafia 3, there is a lot of hype surrounding this game, and it's a little odd to me because Mafia 2 wasn't a gigantic commercial hit. I played Mafia 2 and I absolutely loved the game, but it was never a game that when I talk to my friends, they've all played it, or if I go online, it's not a game that I hear a lot about. There is a niche following for the Mafia series, but with Mafia 3, it really does seem like this is one of the most anticipated games of the year. I don't know why it is that Mafia 3 is so anticipated. I've looked at the gameplay and it does look amazing. I hope it lives up to the expectations, so without further ado, let's get right into the system requirements. So starting things off with the minimum CPU requirements, you're looking at an Intel Core i5-2500K or an AMD FX 8120. Kind of high end, but at this point, if you have a decent gaming rig, you probably have an i5. And for those of you that built PCs years ago and you have the i5-2500K, it really is amazing that it's still a CPU being heralded as the minimum requirement for a game that's probably going to be one of the more higher end games this year. On the AMD side, it being the FX 8120 is a little bit surprising. I would imagine that quad-core AMD CPUs are going to be able to run it, but it's just interesting that they listed the FX 8120. For recommended CPU requirements on the Intel side, you're looking at an i7-3770, so that's pretty high end, or an AMD FX 8350 at 4 GHz. Now, what I've noticed is whenever a game lists a minimum CPU requirement of an i5 and then recommended as an i7, usually in most cases, if you have an overclocked i5, you should be just fine. That's what I've noticed. I have an overclocked i5, and even with the games that recommend an i7, I can run those games perfectly fine. And we're talking really, really well. I do have a very nice GPU in the GTX 1070, but even with an i5 on those games, I'm not being bottlenecked at all. For minimum RAM requirement, you're looking at 6GB as minimum and 8GB as recommended. Nothing too surprising there. A lot of games have been just listing minimum RAM requirement as 8GB, and at this point in 2016, if you don't have 8GB of RAM, I really don't know what to say, because 8GB of RAM is so freaking cheap. I mean, you can get a kit of it for less than $30 in a lot of cases. If you've built a PC in the last 2 to 3 years, you probably have 8GB of RAM, if not more. Moving on to what you guys care about, the GPU requirement. On the AMD side, for minimum, you're looking at an AMD Radeon HD7870 or an NVIDIA GeForce GTX 660. Those are both 2GB video cards. Nothing too crazy there. Those are older GPUs. I had a GTX 660 Ti, and that GPU I think came out back in 2012, so very old GPUs. Most of you guys, if you've built a PC recently, you at least have something on par with this. For the recommended on the AMD side, you're looking at a Radeon R9 290X, and on the NVIDIA side, a GeForce GTX 780 or a GeForce GTX 1060. So they have two GPUs listed. I like how they did that. I'm not a big fan when developers put minimum and recommended GPUs as really old video cards. There's a lot of people that have gotten into PC gaming recently, and they don't even know what an AMD Radeon HD7870 is. So I appreciate it when developers put their minimum and recommended requirements to what is currently available right now on the market. A 780 or a 1060 isn't too crazy. This is a game that I imagine if you want to max it out, it is going to look really good. And yeah, if you want to max out a game like this and get 60 frames per second, you should have a higher end video card. But even with the 1060, it's not like that's a $400 video card. You can pick them up for like $250 to $300. It does say video memory required for recommended is 4GB. So if you have the 1060 3GB model, you might have some limitations with Mafia 3. Finally, for the hard drive space, you're going to need 50GB of free space, which isn't really crazy, and that's insane to say because 50GB is a lot of space, but comparatively speaking to a lot of other games that are coming out, you see a lot of games being 60, 70, 80GB, and then when you throw in DLC, it gets even crazier, so 50GB really isn't anything insane, especially for an open world game like this. Open world games tend to be the biggest in terms of file size, so 50GB isn't anything crazy. So that's going to wrap up this video. Let me know in the comment section down below, are you excited for Mafia 3? Is it one of your most anticipated games of the year, or do you think it's being grotesquely overhyped? I'm very excited for Mafia 3. I've always been a fan of the Mafia games. Mafia 2 was one of my favorite games of last generation. I know on PC we don't really do generations, but I played that game on PS3, then I rebought it on PC, played through it twice, really enjoyed it. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you have a request for a future video, you can also leave that in the comment section down below. As always, guys, thanks for watching, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.